Hi there yarn jugglers, it's Babs here from My Fiery Phoenix, and we are now on to the second part of the Centre Motif for the week 1 release of the Carousel Crochet Along by Stylecraft, designed by Sue Pinner. And we have already created our teeny tiny centre floral motif. If you need to look for the instructions for this, you want to find the first part, which covers the floral aspect. There'll be a link somewhere around the top of the screen, I can't remember which corner it's in, for the playlist, which will have every video that's released as part of the tutorial for this particular crochet along. And what we're going to be doing in this video is taking the floral, which is a lovely beautiful round shape, and we were converting it to an octagon. So we'll be adding in all these additional layers and shading. Now this version is the Batik, and I will be working a bright version, which is the special. What I tend to do, as I mentioned in the previous video, which will be more important for this version, this video that we're moving on to, is I collect and arrange all my yarn before I begin, so I know which order I'm going to be dealing with which yarn. So I have let's find it. I have Spice, which will be followed by Turquoise, which will then be followed, I'm going to run out of hands, by Citron, which will then be followed by Mustard, which we've already used, which will then have the Spice again, followed by Aster, and finally Lipstick. So you will have this amazing gradient effect with these three interspaced with some of these gorgeous blues, and then finished off with the red. So whilst you go and grab your yarn, I'll get set up and start showing you how to convert the centre floral into the beautiful octagon. So now we're going to take our, what's the colour? Spice. I was going to say coral, but that's the Batik version. We'll be taking our Spice. I've already created a slip knot, and we're going to find the space between popcorn stitches. It doesn't matter which one. And we will be pulling through and creating a 4 chain. We're working a chain of 4. So pull this through, and then chain 1, 2, 3, 4, which will actually be representing one double crochet rather, and a 3 chain loop. And we're going to finish this off with another double crochet, and this will be part of a repeating pattern that you will see throughout the circuit this round. We're then going to move on to the other side of the popcorn, and we're going to be working 3 treble crochets. So there's the first. We're then going to be chaining 3 and then working another 3 trebles. So here we have our 3 trebles. And we're now going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then move on to another 3 trebles. And as before, we will continue to be enclosing our loose ends, so that we do not have to have that incredibly tiresome task of sewing in all those ends at the end of the project. So we now have our 2 groups of stitches. We have double crochet, 3 chain, double crochet, treble crochet 3 times with a chain of 3, and then another 3 treble crochets. Sorry, Sophie is feeling the need to join in. So I shall continue on doing this process. So we skip the next popcorn and double, 3 chain. Whoops. This is what happens when you pull your tension too tight. 3 chain. There we go. And then another double. Keep that tail out of the way. And then we'll move on to another one of these triangle sections where we treble, moving the other side of the popcorn. We treble 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and then we have a 3 chain. 1, 2, 3, and then we have another 3 trebles coming back down the other side. Once I've completed this second example for you, I shall then fizz on through the rest of this round, so you don't have to watch this in real time. It's quite a long tutorial if I do everything in real time. I think it took me 2.5 hours when I made up my first sample, and nobody wants to be sitting here watching me crochet for 2.5 hours. You just want to get to the core of what the rounds consist of. So here we have our 2 smaller two smaller sections and the 2 larger sections, and you'll just continue on around until you have 8 of each. So 8 large triangles and 8 of the smaller ones. So I shall just get cracking, and I'll see you back where we join this on. So here we are at the end, and as you can see, our trebles have formed nice big tall points, and our doubles have formed these little loops here, and they go all the way around, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the large, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the smaller. So we simply join this in on the double crochet, on the double crochet, and that's a slip stitch on the first chain, and then there we go. So we slip stitch that through, and then we tie it off, and here we have our round 4 completed. And now we're going to move from the citron to our turquoise, and as always I have a slip knot created, and I'm not going to join exactly where I was before. I'm going to come back a little ways, and this time around we're going to join into any of the tall points. So that's one of these 3 chains that has this nice big loop in it here as a point. So I shall be joining this in, and then I'm going to work a 4 chain, which again is going to turn into one of these little chain. So it's a double, a 3 chain, and a double. So I'll start off by chaining 4. So that's 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is a double and 3 chain, and now I'm going to finish off my next double crochet, which gives me the new version of these little mini peaks here. And now we're going to be repeating the process, but instead of using trebles as we did on the previous row, we're going to use double trebles while we fill in this space. So in case you can't remember how to do those, we use them in the popcorn stitch, and we will be wrapping twice before we start. We'll then come down to the chain that we created in the previous round and pulling through and wrapping again. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as just a quick recap for you there. We'll pull that through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the second 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2, and we'll be creating 3 of these double trebles. Then we'll have a chain of 3, and then we'll have another 3 double trebles, and you'll see how that fills in this gap. So here we go. This is number 2. Add on to number 3. Everything is being done in that same 3 chain space that we created the previous round. So here we have our 3 double trebles, and now we have chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we go on to create another series of 3 double trebles, coming back down the other side. 1, 2, 3, and then on to the last double treble. We then move on and put a double crochet into the top of the next peak, hook everything in, and then 1, 2, 3 chain, and then another double crochet, and then we will then go then how many times, and we can then move on to the repeating pattern. So we have a small peak, a large peak made of double trebles, and back to a small peak, and this will continue all the way around in much the same way that our previous round behaved. So I shall crack on with that in high speed, and I'll join you back for completing this round and moving on to the next. So here we are, we've finished our final set of double trebles, and we're just going to join it back in with a slip stitch, and we will then be tying off as we change colour. One more time. I'll move the turquoise out of the way. So this is the end of our round 5, and as you can see, it is now evening out very nicely. And the next round that we'll be working on will be a foundation layer using the citron. But before we get to that, what I'm just going to do is just show you how, with this particular design where there was a large gap here, I didn't drag that up and around and down. I've secured it in a couple of places, and you may want to trim that off, or you may want to force it round, but I don't think that's so nice. Or you could of course choose to then thread it back through, but just be aware that you may well still have a tail at the back of your work, and please do try and be careful that you are only working from the front of the project. We have to turn to the back occasionally, as we did when we set the popcorn stitches, but for the rest of it we do need to be working from the front. Now hopefully you will have something slightly messier on the back, which will give you a clear indication of where the front and the back is, and if at all possible leave any tails that you have hanging out the back, so that will give you another clear indication. So I've got a couple that need to be trimmed up, but trimming is certainly nowhere near as time consuming as actually sewing the ends in. So we have now finished with our turquoise. We're moving on to round 6. So just to clarify, where the pattern itself is referring to a chain point, it means one of these large double treble points. Where it is talking about a chain loop, it's talking about one of these smaller hills, if you want to call it that. So the point and the loop, and what we're going to be doing is creating 5 chains in between each of these points. So we will start off, we'll take the ready prepared loop and pull that through, and we will chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You do need to try and keep this quite loose. If you make it too tight, then everything will be pulled in and you won't have a nice flat motif. This is a 5 and a double chain. So we're going to double crochet and chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to pop that in here. Now, as I've said before, don't worry too much about these these ends, we will be weaving them in on the next round. On this round we're simply laying the foundation layer of these chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take it to the next loop, double chain it through, or double crochet it through rather. So as you can see, we're now starting to have the edging foundation round made in place. So what I'll do is I shall fast forward through this, and then we can look at actually filling in the foundation chain. And so now we're on to our last set of chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to slip stitch this into the end of that first. Woo! Sorry about that. See, this is why you need to relax and not have the tension too tight. So we'll slip stitch in here just to join that all together, and my tension's all over the place. I need to relax and then pull that through. Hurrah! So now we have, if I just lay this down, as you can see it's slightly wonky, but by the time we've filled this out with our next round, round 7, things will have evened out a lot more, I promise. So we start off and we're going to not change colour this time, which means we can now think about weaving in these ends, and we're going to be chaining 2, 1, 2, and this is going to represent our first treble, and we're going to be filling this batch with 5 trebles, so we need to do an extra 4. So tying in that tail, we now have 1, 2, make sure that I've got enough loose yarn, 3, 4. So we've got the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, plus the 2 that I initially created, and now we are going to skip over this double, and we're going to repeat another 5 trebles. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 more, 5. And what we're going to do is just even these out. So just give it a gentle tug, even them out so they're spread along the foundation chain. And as you can see, what we're doing is actually setting up our straight edges. We're moving from a circle down here, you can see it's very circular, to actually setting up straight edges. We're then going to chain 3. No, we're not. We're going to chain 2. I do apologise. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to do that process again. 5, skip, 5, chain 2, 5, 5, chain 2. So everywhere that we had one of our tall peaks, we will be chaining 2, and the rest will simply be 5 trebles. So I shall go on and do that high speed, and I'll meet you back at the end of this round. So we've now come full circle, and we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trebles on this last portion. Now what we need to do is chain 2, because we are at this this point, to give us the gaps. 1, 2, and what we're going to do is then slip stitch into the top stitch up here to join everything together, and then I will tie it off. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is our fifth. We have our gap here, and then we have the remainder of our sides coming up from there. Now the one thing that I would say is you need to pay attention when you set up the next round that you include the chain to the right of this initial stitch, and don't get confused thinking that this gap here is where the chain space should be. This is the chain space. So hopefully now you can see, if we just straighten these out slightly, that this is starting to set up your straight edges. So we're moving away from a circular pattern into some straight edges. So we'll move away our citron and move on to our mustard, and this means that we are on round 8, and we will be joining into any chain 2 space. So that's one of these larger spaces. It doesn't matter which, any one will do. And we will then chain 4. So we'll pull this through and then chain 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this is where it could potentially become rather confusing, so I'm going to take my time and I'm going to try and show you very close up where I'm actually inserting my hook. So we're starting off, we've done our treble with our chain 2, we're going to create another treble in the same chain space, and then we're going to start to create our individual trebles that go along the top of this side. Now it's very easy to miss this first gap and simply start here, but we need one in each chain space. So we go into that first chain and create a treble, and then come along to the next, and then to the next, and so on through the rest of this edge. So I'm going to continue along this line, and we should have another 10 stitches once we've completed this. And one thing that I've just noticed is that I've forgotten to tie in my tail, which means that when I come back round the other way, I need to think about picking it up. But if we have this count, we have 1, I'm not going to include the first stitch because we then got a chain 2, so clearly this is going to be part of this side, and this is going to be part of the other side. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 coming up. So we'll continue on. Because by the end of this row we should have 12. And I'll explain that again because it does sound very confusing the first time you run through this section. It doesn't seem like the numbers would work out, but that's generally because you've missed that first stitch that I showed you in great detail just now. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have our first 2, so we have the first treble, we have a chain, we have our next treble. We then stitch another 10 trebles in place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We then have the gap. And so we treble. We create a chain of 2, and then we treble. So the first treble before the chain is part of this side. The second treble after the chain is part of this side. Now it makes far more sense, but this first time it can be very, very confusing. So we just need to make sure that we pick up this very first space, this stitch, this first stitch here. When we start. So we've trebled in the gap, and now we're going to pick up the first stitch, which is just outside of the gap, and then everything will be nice and easy. So that's 1, 2 after the chain space, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 will take us to our final chain space, and then we get our 12th when we jump into the big gap, then we chain 2. So after the chain we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then we start again. And it sounds like maybe I'm going overboard when I'm describing this quite in so much detail, but that first space can be incredibly tricky, and if you get that first one wrong, it just throws you out for the rest, and you can never find that missing gap. So once you've done that a couple of times, you just continue on around the rest of the sides, join in with a slip stitch, and I'll meet you back here where we move on to round 9. So now that I've completed all that edging, hopefully you can now see that it is starting to look significantly more angular rather than circular, and the stitch count should be working out for you. So if I take one of these edges, we have the gap, then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 trebles, and then a 2 chain gaps. And this is what you want to have on each of the sides. So we're now coming back to our last side, and remember we already have a 2 chain here that we created initially, so we should have this treble as one of the ones that we need for this side. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's our full complement of 12 for this side. So we simply need to slip stitch into the top of this particular chain. On we go, and then slip stitch through, and then we can tie that off. Now, one thing that I've done, I completely forgot about tying in this end. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run it up and catch it inside my my tying off process. So I'm going to lay that over. If you manage to actually incorporate this as you're going along, you won't have to mess about with this. But this is me showing you my mistakes and how I fix them. So I'm going to incorporate that in that tying off section there. So that's neat, not perfect, but neat from the back. And this is just an option. This isn't the ideal option. Ideally, you wouldn't have forgotten about it in the first place and you'd have tied it in. And so now we're going to start going around with our spice. So pull the loop through, and we're going to chain 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is 1 treble and a chain 2. We're going to then chain a treble in the same space, and as we did last time, we will be discounting the first one because that belongs to this side, but we will be counting this one because that belongs to the side that we're going to work. And unlike last round when we had 12, we're now going to have 14. We got an extra 2 on each row, and we're going to ensure that we catch that tail so that we're weaving that end in. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5. And one thing that I will ask you, please, if you could let me know in the comments below, Do you prefer it if you watch me fast forward through my crochet, or do you prefer it if I jump away and you just see the end of the of that particular round completed? There's no point me forcing you all to watch me crocheting at high speed if none of you are actually receiving any benefit for doing that. So please pop your comments and preferences underneath the video, and do that as a treble rather than a double, and then I can make sure that I'm tailoring these tutorials to what the majority of you will find of benefit and use. It's not my goal to just bore you all senseless with lots and lots of video of me crocheting. Whilst it's great fun to do it yourself, you don't necessarily want to watch somebody else do it for 2 hours. So we are very nearly at the end of this row, or this section, so we'll just have a quick count up. Remember, we're ignoring this first piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's one more on this row, which gives us 13. And then we will be diving into the space with the 2 chains that we created last time around for our 14th. So let me just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Then we double chain. Oh, sorry, we chain 2, and then we treble. And this time we're going to catch all those loose ends and tidy them away. So this time I'm not going to ask you to sit there and watch me go round. I will cut away and come back as we're joining and then moving on to round 10, which will be more of the same. So round 10 and round 11, one will be in Aster, which is the next one, and the last one will be in Cherry, which is in Lipstick, which is the red, and that will finish off this centerpiece. But this is the same process. So we've started off with 10, 12, 14, 16, and then the final row will be 18 large. So I won't show you me going around the whole outside circumference each time because it is the same process, but I will show you how I count the 12, the 14, the 16 and the 18. So I'll see you back in a mo. So here we are, having gone all the way around the outside edge with round 9, and we're just going to slip stitch into the top of the first row. So allowing for a gap for 2. So allowing for a gap of 2 chains, come up and we hook through with a slip stitch to join everything together. So we've got there's our gap, and I'm just going to tie this off. And here we can see, before I move on to the next round, you can see that we've now got these rows of the double chain space gaps as we're going up from each of these points, and these should be aligning very nicely. And each time we move a row now, each time we go up a round, we're getting an extra 2 stitches on either end, which are being set within these two gaps. So I'm going to grab my Aster and we'll start all over again. So again, this portion I'm starting to go through a little bit quicker because you've already seen it twice, but we'll go through it just once so that you can see the count come out at 16 trebles on this occasion. So we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to drop another treble in the same space, and then we're going to treble all the way along, remembering where our first stitch is, which is on the right of this first pillar, not on the left. And then we'll just treble all the way along. If I get myself some free yarn.
And then we only have one more round to go after this aster round is completed, and that will be back using the lipstick red from the very centre that we started with. So how many are we up to now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're halfway there. 9, 10, 11. You'll certainly know how to do trebles by the end of this. 12, 13, 14, 15, and then our 16th will be in the 2 chain space. So we ignore the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And this is where we're forming this extra little window here with 2 chains. Moving back through into the trebles. And then moving back along the next side. So you can see that this window using the 2 chain space is continuing to grow. So I shall finish this off and then come back and show you the last 18 count using the lipstick. And here we are with the finished blue row with the aster, and each of these edges, just as a reminder, should be 16 stitches long in between each of the 2 chain points. So I am now going to just link this back through onto the original chain, and then pull it through to tie it off. And the majority of work has actually been tied in on the back. There's only a couple of bends that need to be dealt with as we move into the rather bittersweet final round. Yeah, it's going to be wonderful because we'll have a completed centre motif. However, if you're nice and early with the process, then that means that you've got another couple of weeks to wait for the next pattern to be released. However, we'll put that sad thoughts to one side and move on with the final round. So here we are coming back to the final row, or the final round, and there is a slight difference. In beforehand we had a 2 chain space for each of these points. As this is now the final round, we will be going and working with a 3 chain space. So where we normally would be chaining 4 at this point, we will be chaining 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then working a treble back into the same space. And then the rest of the process will be the same, except we're now having a 16 count of treble stitches. We still need to dive back into that particularly small space to start us off, and then we can continue on along the remainder of this side. Sophie's getting a bit agitated about something, so I apologise for that, but I'll just move on through so that we can get to the other end and see the chain 3 in all its glory to give us a nice crisp corner, as against a chain 2 which would give us a rounded corner, which wouldn't necessarily give us the shaping that we're looking for this particular piece. So we'll go back through the trebles. Let's see how far we've got. So we ignore the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Not many to go now. Another 6, 13, 14, 15. The occasional squeaky toy in the background. 16, 17, and then 8.
18 is into the large gap that we had from previously. We now do a chain 3, and then finally we finish off with a treble in that gap, which means that we're all set up with our 18 stitches and ready to move on.
And so here we are, just about to slip stitch this into the last position, into the last position, and then that will be our centre motif finished. So to recap, so during this process you'll have learnt how to double crochet, how to treble crochet, how to double treble crochet, how to set in place a foundation row, and then how to build on that foundation row, and how to increase in quite a subtle way. And if I just show you the back, hopefully you will also have learnt how to tie in the ends as you go along. And really all I need to do is just snip off a couple of loose bits that are poking through, but there are no ends to be tying off towards the end of this process. And if the rest of the project moves along in this way, it will be a dream, because when you get to the end it will be done. But as I say, sadly bittersweet, although the beautiful centre panel is now completed, and we have it in both the Batik and the one that we've just completed in special. We now have to wait. We now have to wait another 2 weeks until the next pattern is released. But I will be looking forward to seeing what you make in the Facebook group. So hopefully I will see you in there soon. If this has been of use to you, please check out the other videos that are part of this series. There's links one or other side of the screen. I can't remember which, because sometimes it records it and flips it. That'll take you through the rest of the tutorials in this series. If you want them to just pop into your YouTube feed, then subscribe. Otherwise, please come by the Facebook group and catch up on all the lovely crochet gossip. See you next time. Bye for now.